The Home Office has formally requested the Royal Navy's help to deal with migrants attempting to cross the English Channel from France. A total of 151 people reached the UK via small boats yesterday, following record numbers earlier in the week.
Yesterday, our BBC Europe reporter Gavin Lee witnessed one group of migrants as they attempted to make the crossing from France to the UK.
We were told, actually, one of the destinations that migrants are setting off from on a regular basis is here in the harbour town of Gravelines, quite a sort of picture postcard town, about 20 miles east of Calais. Now, this morning, after a few minutes on the beach, we saw in the distance a group of migrants, about 20 or so. There were some young children on board as well, a baby, we're told, as well, who were struggling with the boats, the rubber boat with a motor on it. They ended up going into the water, coming back again as well. There were people running between the dunes and the boat too, appear to be smugglers, and eventually the boat went out into the water. It clearly looked unsafe as well. The witnesses who were closest to the boat than us said that they could hear children screaming on the boat. And all the while, this is a huge beach. This is a massive tourist beach, which yesterday was packed with tourists. No sign of any surveillance here. The French authorities, French police have got back to us this morning and said that they are improving their success rate of catching migrants at sea, saying it's gone from 40% last year to catching 47% this year. And they say in terms of the sheer number, they are catching more than ever, 10 times more in July alone than this time last year.
Tony Smith is a former head of the UK Border Force. Tony, good morning. I wondered if you could just pick up on what we just heard from Gavin there. Can you explain to us how different? I know we've seen a record number this week, but how different are the number of migrants attempting to cross the channel? How different is that number looking compared to what it was like on a similar warm week when you were head of the Border Force?
Yeah, good morning. Well, I was actually in the Border Force, or it was the Immigration Service actually before that, for over 40 years. And in 2002, I remember vividly, we had 80,000 asylum seekers arriving at the UK border. The vast majority were actually coming across from France, but in those days they were coming on the trains and the ferries and concealed in lorries. And so we have concluded a number of treaties with the French government, which enables us to operate our controls on the French side, you see. So we have Border Force officers who go across and check passports in Calais, in Dunkirk, on the trains at Coquelles. And we've also invested a lot in the security of the ports around there to stop people getting into lorries. So what's happened is the migrants have looked for other ways to get across, and they found that actually it's relatively easy to get across in small boats. And so we're now seeing these incursions, these maritime incursions, which have been going on for the last couple of years, really, by sea. And that's become the big headline at the moment. The numbers aren't massive, but
so these are much smaller numbers than when you talk about those days with the lorries and the trains being the main way in which these journeys were attempted. The numbers were a lot higher than they are now with the dinghy crossings.
Yeah, they were, but the problem is that the smugglers have identified a loophole which creates what we call the pull factor, in that they realise that by getting people onto the English Channel, and there's no shortage of irregular migrants that are going to try this in France and all of the EU, that once they're on the English Channel, then there's a loophole in the law. The law of the sea applies, and that if they get picked up by a British vessel or make it as far as territorial waters, we are duty bound then to consider their asylum applications, bring them ashore, and then it becomes very, very difficult to return them, you see. So the danger is that these numbers will escalate, and we will find ourselves back in a position we were all those years ago when I was there, where actually the Home Office was so swamped with applications for asylum, we had to increase the Home Office budget threefold. And I think we're still struggling with some of the backlogs now, not to mention, of course, the additional costs of housing asylum seekers and processing them in country. So we are facing a new challenge here, and I think the Border Force are now trying to adapt to deal with it.
And what do you make of the formal request from the Home Office for assistance from the Royal Navy?
Yeah, well, so we got 5 cutters which we inherited from Customs when we merged with Customs in 2008. They were never designed really for interdiction on the high seas. If you look at other countries like the US and Australia, they have a dedicated border patrol which is responsible for protecting their coastline and their territorial waters. We don't really have that. So I think they're looking to see what other assets we've got in the Navy, in the Coast Guard, to integrate a command which would enable us to secure our maritime and coastal borders in a more effective way.
What would that security security look like? What would the Navy be doing?
I think they would first and foremost give us more intelligence about where people are pushing off. I mean, your report said, you're finding people on that particular beach down in France. Well, we don't really want to rely on reporters to tell us that. We'd much rather have aerial surveillance and agreements that we would be able to track that and work with the French to identify people before they leave and intercept them there, but also far greater coverage on the high seas. But the problem still is that if they get picked up by the Navy or the Border Force under the current construction, they can still seek protection from the UK, and we would still be obliged to bring them to the UK. So I think what we're trying to do is get an agreement with the French that actually, regardless of who picks them up, and have to make sure they're safe and well. We don't want anybody to drown here. That they're returned to their point of departure for processing, and they're not actually getting round the border security by getting out onto the channel. Priti
Patel, the Home Secretary, has appointed Dan O'Mahony, who's going to be working to make the channel route unviable for small boat crossings. What does unviable mean? How can you actually do that? Or is it a question, as you say there, of reaching more agreements with the French?
Well, yes, I think primarily, and there are meetings I know going on at ministerial level this week to talk to the French. Now, the French have done a lot. I don't think always widely reported, but actually the French have done quite a lot. Quite a lot of boats are being stopped on the French side. They have put more people out, and we've invested in that. We've given them some money, and I think what we'll be looking to do under a single command, under Dan's command, will be to consolidate that effort to make sure that we can break this cycle. You see, because the problem is at the moment, people are listening to your program, they're seeing the media, and these messages have been across the world. People are saying, well, why don't we go, it's pretty easy to get into the EU, and the external southern border is very porous. There's no borders in the Schengen zone. Let's head up to northern France, and that's just fueling the smuggler supply chain. So I think to make this unviable, we've got to break that cycle, and I think that is a mixture of operational and policy issues and international law that the Home Office are wrestling with right now.
So when we talk about unviable, we're talking about a political solution. We're not talking about a solution that is happening out on the water.
I think we're talking about both. I think we need an agreement with French. I mean, and we have, as I say, we've got a number of bilateral treaties already with the French, and we set those up when numbers were greater than this. So I don't think it's beyond our reach to get further agreement with the French and negotiate a settlement. And I worked in the US-Canada border for 3 years on an exchange program after 9/11, and we had joint US and Canadian patrols out on the Great Lakes, which were empowered to cross territorial waters behind a joint mission to stop irregular migration and smuggling. And that's the kind of thing that we need to look at. It's a new agreement or arrangement which we can come to under international law with our friends and neighbours across the channel to stop smuggling, and then an operational response behind that which would actually put the smugglers out of business.
Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, thanks for talking to us this morning.